Hey everyone, Dan here, and we are coming off of last night getting a brand new WandaVision. So I am going to do my live review and commentary. But I am going to do something different this week is I'm going to leave the spoiler message up. Because since I'm doing this live and anybody could just happen on to my feed, I don't want them to click on it going, hey, what's Dan talking about this morning? And, oh, I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. So that bastard, So I'm leaving the spoiler thing up through this video because there is absolutely some spoilers in here. Now, I'm going to go through and, by the way, feel free to comment as you're going along. Jump on in. I got up this morning and I posted onto social media a simple question. Are we, as an audience, trying to overly complicate WandaVision? Could this show be a lot simpler than we're making it out to be? Could it just be straightforward? Is it, it's Wanda, it's Agatha, it's, I have been covering a lot of theories, some my own, some other people's. And the only ones I've been getting right, it seems so far, has been director Hayward, who is the most normal character in this, and it's pretty easy to see his motivations. And the fact that it was Agatha, or Agnes was Agatha Harkness. But there's still a bunch of stuff out there that's unknown, but is it unknown? Or is it just stuff we're trying to add things to? But let me go through the episode, and then we'll talk about what the actual outstanding stuff are. This episode picks up immediately after the last one. Wanda is in Agatha's basement, and her powers don't work. She can't do magic because there's protection spells up. And that's the first sign that Wanda's powers have always been kind of vague. When they create them in the first place, they weren't really magic spells. They were hex spells. I mean, it was the nice thing was they could make them do whatever the hell they wanted, or it was probability that she could change the probabilities of things and make things happen at random. And then I think it was Roger Stern is the one that started actually tying her into magic and being trained by Agatha Harkness. And I could be wrong by the writer on that. But yeah. So that's the person who, so for a long time, her power was, she was a mutant and had the ability to change probabilities, kind of like Domino in the Deadpool movies. But totally at random, just like her. So we've seen that power work in films, but now we're tying her closer to actual magic, that she is a type of witch. And the whole Nexus thing last week seems to play into this as well. Now, we don't get the sitcom format, but we understand what the sitcoms have to do with this. We don't get a commercial, but we get them starting off in Agatha's basement. And Agatha's pretty straightforward. We find out, well, at first what we find out is Agatha's past. We go back to the days of the Salem witch trials. And she is being taken to the stake, but not by witch finders and stuff like that, but by her own coven for using magic that was above her age and station. And the head of the coven is her own mother. And they try to destroy her. And Agatha's powers end up backlashing against them and killing them all. And Agatha, though she says she can be good, her mom's like, no, you can't. And she gets that brooch Agatha wears all the time. That is actually her mother's brooch. So we see, that's pretty straightforward there. That's why she carries it. It's a family heirloom. Now, a lot of speculation that, oh, that's a symbol of this character or that character. It's Nightmare, it's Mephisto, it's Chthon. Again, are we overly complicating a straightforward, simple story? And then we cut to the basement, and Wanda's powers aren't working, and Agatha kind of starts explaining the way magic works and how she doesn't understand why Wanda is so powerful. How is it Wanda can do all this stuff? How is it Wanda can run this entire city setup where she's doing spells miles away? I think Agatha is wanting the power, and we never find out more about the book. We still don't know if it's a Darkhold or any other kind of book, but I have a feeling that the reason she wants the power has to do with the book. Maybe she can't open the book. Maybe she needs the book to bring in her master. Don't know. Again, that's back in speculation category. All we know is that Agatha wants to understand that and has Wanda in control at that point, even binds her at one point. And she says, basically, I'm going to take you through. I need to figure out how you have this power, where it came from, where you got the big guns, as she referred to it, and forces her to relive past traumas, the ones that we've been hinted at through the commercials and stuff. And Wanda's forced to participate because Agatha has the boys. Agatha has the twins. And she even refers to it as them being in her bewitched basement, which is funny because Agatha's house is based on the house in Bewitched. So they first go back to Sokovia during the war days, and you see a young Pietro and young... Agatha also tells her flat out that Pietro's fake. She refers to him as Fietro. And that she would have done necromancy to bring him back, but his body's on another continent and full of holes. So she just made this guy up. And it was her eyes and ears through the character. And it was just a crystalline construct is what she referred to it as, which kind of shoots the whole opening up the multiverse to the X-Men universe thing. So, and again, the tough thing with this show is you don't know if they're telling us the truth. You don't know if the characters are telling us the truth. There's a very much an unreliable narrator thing going on here. But so Wanda has to go with her. She knows that Pietro was fake, that it was a creation of Agatha's. They go back and they see young Pietro and young Wanda spending the evening with their parents. Dad comes home. He's trying to sell these seasoned versions of sitcoms, and that's kind of how he makes money. I guess he goes out and he has a little table and he puts out these movies and stuff, and he ends up having to bring them home, and they have sitcom night or TV night, and that's when they practice their English. And there's even one point Agatha calls Wanda out on her reappearing and disappearing accent. But as they're Wanda gets to pick the show that night. She picks a very specific episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show, and which then explains why we start off in the Dick Van Dyke world, at least from that point of view. Then, of course, the bomb hits. The parents are killed. By the way, the parents are not played by the commercial people. It's not the man and the woman from the commercials are not her parents. I know that was a big theory that a lot of people were hanging on to. Nope. Completely different actors. Nothing to do with it. So they're out. And we see that the bomb thing, and they're sitting there, and the bomb's about to just take it, blinking away. The big Stark logo. Her and Pietro are hiding under a bed, and then Wanda gets pulled out from underneath and is back to being her adult self. And Agnes is like, "You used a probability spell." And she's like, I didn't. It was a dud. Well, and she they were there for 2 days waiting for rescue. But I think she did use a probability spell to make it so it didn't go off. And she had innate magic from birth. She was basically a witch from birth. Well, then they move on to the next stage, which is Hydra and her experimenting. And she gets called out for joining a terrorist organization. And Wanda's like, we wanted to make a difference. We wanted to change the world. But they show her going in to a room with Loki's scepter, which, of course, had the Mind Stone in it. And she has this moment where the Mind Stone breaks out of its casing, and you see this image of, I don't know, a witch coming at her. And then she suddenly, and then she passes out, and they put her in another room, and she had an experience with a Infinity Stone, which, as Agatha put it, had she not had, then her powers probably would have died on the vine without training. But instead, it got supercharged by the Infinity Stone. Now, how this what we don't know is how this affects Pietro's powers. Was he also latent powers? Was he a mutant and the stone brought him forward? Did the stone give him the powers? It's unsure. We don't see how Pietro ties in. But, so we get that. And then we see her watching more sitcoms. Through the whole thing, she's watching sitcoms. They're kind of her solace, her happy place. And then we move on to, and that's a Brady Bunch episode where she's in with Hydra. And then we move on to a time when she's at the Avengers Mansion after Pietro's dead. And this image where she's talking to Vision, this is Vision basically trying to reach out to her and comfort her after her brother's death. And he says one of the most amazing things. He offers to let her talk about it. And she says, what makes you think talking about it would make me feel any better? The only thing that would make me feel better is to see him again. And that she talks about the sorrow and how it's overwhelming and probably drowned her. And he says, I don't think that'll happen. And he talks about how he's always been alone. He's never had a loved one to miss. So what he sees as that not everything is sorrow, and that the line is, grief is simply love persevering, which I thought was brilliant. That one really hit me. That was a powerful statement, and I thought it was really well delivered and well written. It's a good line. But he spends time with her watching sitcoms and starts to get his sense of humor, and you see the start of their relationship there. The two of them are basically left alone, and they start building their relationship there. And then from there, we move forward to after Vision's death, and Wanda going to SWORD to get the body after she returned from the snap. And that's where things get interesting, because we had the version that director Hayward told us, where she came in and stole the body, but that's not how it goes at all. And it also explains why he had to go back and couldn't just show them the footage, because he had to edit the footage to make it look bad for Wanda. But she shows up and basically wants the body, and she wants to bury him. And she's delayed for a few minutes, and then when she goes in, she meets Hayward, and Hayward walks her into another room where you see them actively dismantling Vision. And him saying, well, you have the ability to bring him back, to reanimate, or to bring him back. First says reboot him, but then to play to her says to bring him back to life. Well, I don't think she does, but the interesting thing is that how is it that they are just then decommissioning Vision? They've had the body for 5 years. And also we find out later on in the post-credit scene that they have reassembled the body multiple times. So I think what happened is he saw her show up or knew she was going to come once everybody returned and staged this to try to get Wanda to bring him back, to see him actively being torn apart, to get her to reactivate him. That's my theory, is that Hayward was pulling her strings at that point. And when she says, I'm not here for that, I'm just here to give him a proper burial, he says, well, I can't let you do that. That's $3 billion worth of vibranium that you just want to stick in the ground. And she's like, he's all I have. And he's like, you don't have him. He's not yours. So she, of course, gets upset and shatters the glass and goes down there. But all she does is when she's down there is she tries to see if there's any of him left in the body. And he's not. He's not there. And she leaves peacefully. No attacking anything else. She broke the glass. Other than that, she did nothing aggressive. Okay, she blew open the doors in the earlier thing, but it was just to save the guy from having to buzz her in. But so this is all set up by Hayward. And we know, as I've said in other videos, I think Hayward is trying to rebuild Ultron in a sense. Not necessarily Ultron, but the idea of the shield around the world. And I think that's what he's wanted to do with Vision, because he's scared of all the aliens that have been invading Earth. So I think that's Hayward's motivation. And I think I'm right on that. I think that's, so far, I think that's spot on. I don't think he's evil, creepy. I think he's overzealous, trying to protect humanity and tapping into some massive gray areas, which could get him in trouble. And the fact that he's not planning to nuke the damn thing, he's just, he's got other plans, makes me agree that he's not necessarily evil. He's just a corrupt bureaucrat trying to dancing in the gray areas to get stuff done. Now, from there, we see Wanda go back to her car, and there's a deed on the seat. Now, there's some speculation on where the deed came from. Did it just magically appear on the seat of her car, or was it already there? And the deed, of course, is to the house, or the plot of land that she sets up in Westview. And there's a note on it with a heart drawn on the deed, and it says something to the effect of "a place to grow old," and signed with a V. And she goes there. Now, I've heard a couple people already say, well, maybe Agatha put that deed in her car, or maybe Mephisto did that, or Nightmare, or something like that. And I think the Vision just did it. I think he was trying to find them a place to live together outside. He talked about her staying with him in Infinity War. I think he bought that property with the idea of them living together and growing old together. And when he died, and they talked about him having a will, maybe that got left to her, and she found out about it, and that's what set everything off. But yeah, I don't know if there's anything more to it than just that Vision left that for her. She goes there and she stands on the property, and that's when it just gets too much for her. She gets absolutely overwhelmed and loses it. I don't know if it's a psychotic snap or just that's when her powers just go out. And at first it builds the house, and it builds the 1950s setup with the black and white, and it spreads from there to the point where it takes over the whole town, and it rebuilds Vision. And the most interesting thing for me about the rebuilding of Vision is that while Wanda's energy is always red, and it was red when it went through the town and changed everything. And we got to see it, by the way, when she drove into town, we got to see a couple of the locals, like Phil Jones and Herb and the mailman. And the mailman's just a delivery guy, and Phil Jones is a piano teacher, and Herb's just walking the street. Oh, we also got to see Mrs. Hart. So she was just sitting in a little cafe, and it looks like a rundown town, like the blip devastated them, or the snap, the blip, and that they still haven't quite recovered from it yet. But this is right after. I mean, yeah, this is like 2 weeks after everybody's return. So I don't know how much they would have recovered in that time. But so when the power spreads out, it's all red, which is Wanda's normal power signature, just like Catherine Hahn's or Agatha's is purple. But when the Vision is being reformed, he's yellow. The energy that's reforming the Vision is yellow, which has always been his power signature, but it's also the Mind Stone's power signature. And if her powers were accentuated by the Mind Stone, maybe she's using that to recreate him, which could become really important in a little bit, with the post-credit scene and next episode. So then we get the scene where Wanda's in color and Vision's in black and white, and then she turns to black and white, and then he says, "Wanda, welcome home." And, they go into the little sitcom world, the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was her favorite, and it goes from there. And then she ends up appearing behind it, and suddenly we're in the studio where it's being filmed. There's the lights, there's the audience area, and Agatha's in the audience area, and she's talking about how she's got it figured out, and then she disappears, and you hear Billy and Tommy screaming from outside, and Wanda runs for the exit door on the studio, and it turns out it's the door to Agatha's apartment, or her house, and she runs outside, and we find Agatha in full gear, her outfit, which looks a lot like the Agatha Harkness costume from the comics, and she's got purple energy wrapped around the kids' throats and is holding them like leashes, like she's going to choke them. And you see Wanda running up, and her powers are back. You can see the red energy signatures starting up. And Agatha explains, she goes, but basically says that she's supposed to be a myth. Wanda is supposed to be a myth, someone with the ability to spontaneously create, and refers to her as the Scarlet Witch. That this is the mythological title of some super powerful magic user that can do all the stuff that Wanda's doing, that she's a thing of legends. And I think that ties into the nexus of reality and the Nexus commercial from last, so that Wanda is something more. And, had she never come across the Mind Stone, maybe that would never have come forward. Maybe it's the combination is what created her. We'll have to find out. But so many of the things that we've been speculating have just kind of, they might be falling to the wayside. They could still come back, but what's going on with Pietro and Monica? Well, if Pietro's just a crystalline figure, then that Agatha's using, then he could have been on sentry duty and caught her, or he could be an actual person, someone who lives in the town. Agatha could have lied about that. See, that's the thing, is that we're all kind of like, well, maybe they're lying about it. Maybe they're not telling us the truth. And that's kind of weird, but we're not trusting the show, and maybe we should at this point. We're one episode away from it being done. This was the penultimate episode. And of course, like last week, we got an end credit scene, and this one is fascinating because we cut back to Hayward and Sword, and somebody tells them we're ready to launch, and then they go inside. And I had kind of mentioned this earlier in the day during the pre-show, but the idea of, I've never thought that Vision was the Vision. The only time I ever thought, okay, maybe I'm wrong on that, has to do with the way he's Hayward's tracking, how he found a way to track. I thought, well, maybe it is the Vision's body, and that's how he's doing it. He had some way to track the Vision's body, but I never really felt like it was the Vision because the memory loss, the odd powers, the fact that he has super speed when the Vision never did have super speed, stuff like that. The overtly emotional, the screaming in fear and stuff like that. None of those fit Vision. At least the normal Vision. So it didn't surprise me when Hayward talks about, we've disassembled and reassembled this guy multiple times and never could figure it out until we get some actual energy from the source. And you see the drone that's covered in the crackling energy that Wanda used on it. And they tapped it into this converter, and they reanimate Vision. But it's not the Vision we're used to seeing. This is the white Vision or the spectral Vision that showed up in West Coast Avengers shortly after that involved with the kids being returned to Mephisto's spirit in the comics, or soul. So could this be another sign that we are going to get Mephisto? Possible. But basically, we're going to have two Visions. We're going to have the Vision inside the Hex, and we're going to have the actual body of the Vision, who likely does not have the personality of the Vision. He's not really the Vision. So that leads to a lot of questions. Is there a Vision at the end of this? Do the two Visions destroy each other, or do they somehow get merged to get a new kind of Vision? I would like to see them merge. When we've lost a lot of Avengers, Paul Bettany is great. I would like to see them merge, or somehow we still end up with a Vision at the end of this. But we're just as likely to see them fight and end up with none. It also the question begs the question, the cameo, or the actor that they get to work with, that Paul Bettany gets to work with at the end. Is he talking about himself? An actor he's always wanted to work with since he was young, and he has some spectacular scenes with. That's pretty much the description he gave. Was he trolling us? Is it himself? Is Paul Bettany talking about him, that Paul Bettany is going to cameo, that he's going to play scenes against himself? That is very possible at this point. I still think that there's a big bad behind Agatha, that her motivations just to find out her just wanting more power doesn't seem right. There has to be a reason she wants the power. It sounds like there's a necessity to it. I think it has to do with the book, but again, this is all speculation. But I think there still is a bigger bad that will tie into the Doctor Strange universe. But the idea that the cameo that they've been talking about is Paul Bettany, is that he's basically going to do scenes with himself. That is absolutely hilarious. And if he is trolling us, we all deserve it. Because we have been hanging on this show. I mean, I've done multiple videos. You go online, everybody's doing videos and wild speculation. And it's been fun. I mean, don't get me wrong. That's been part of the fun of the show, is that we're all trying to figure things out. But we may be trying to make it too complicated. Oh, well, they said this and it's actually this, It was Wanda all along. Well, then it can't be Wanda all along. Well, it turns out, yeah, Wanda's the one that built the Hex. She's the one that put it together. Oh, that can't be Agatha. It's too obvious. No, it was absolutely Agatha. It was Agatha all along. The other day, I heard people talking about, well, they're telling us it's fake Pietro, therefore it has to be real. No, it could absolutely be a fake Pietro. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And I think that's been the most interesting revelation through all this, or this last night, and I watched it twice now, is that we really could just be looking at a much more straightforward storyline than we expect, than folks were starting to expect. And I think if this had been binged, if it had been all released at once, there's a good chance that none of the speculation would have happened because we would have just gone to the next episode and the next episode, next episode. But here we get a week to sit back and go, oh God, what do they mean? What did that, what did the cicada on the wall mean? Of course, that means Mephisto. And, they said nightmare twice. So there must be nightmare. They mentioned the engineer twice. So that has to be a big character. It's got to be Reed Richards. It has to be Reed Richards. Yeah. No, it doesn't. None of this has to be. It could just be a fly or a cicada on the wall. It could just be a random engineer that she knew that would build it, and then Major Goodner showed up. Do I want that to? No, I'd like it to be bigger things. I'd like them to set up more stuff because that's the fun of the MCU. But there's a chance that we're getting what we're getting, that there are no big reveals left. We're going to get a big action scene where you got Wanda versus Agatha and Vision versus Vision, which is as MCU as you possibly can get. Because the whole thing the MCU has done for years is pit the hero against a bad guy with duplicate powers. Iron Man and Ironmonger, Iron Man and Whiplash / Crimson Dynamo, Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket, Captain America and Red Skull, both super soldiers. It's down the line, they match them up to where they're fighting somebody with the same powers, and they're firing mirror versions of themselves. So what's more mirror than Wanda taking on a thousands-year-old or hundreds-of-year-old witch, and Vision taking on Vision? That's as MCU as you get. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's all we got. Maybe there is no big bad. The cameo is just Paul Bettany working with himself. There is no engineer. Monica's got her powers. That was the big surprise. And we got the teaser of Pietro, but this is not introducing the X-Men, which Kevin Feige said there wouldn't be any X-Men through Phase 4 because he's already had that plan out. No introduction of the Fantastic Four. We could end up with one more episode that's just a big fight. And it might not even be a bigger episode. It could just be another 45-minute episode like this one. Now, just because the director said it was 60 minutes doesn't mean they didn't trim it down. Or a 6-hour thing. We're still about an hour and 15 minutes. So maybe it's a double-sized finale. But it could be a 45-minute. It could be a 35-minute episode. We know there's a scene with Vision and Wanda talking about fighting for their home. So there's definitely more to come, but yeah, we could have all been getting played and trolled, They and don't get me wrong, I think they absolutely knew they were doing this. I think they left a lot of questions out there to get us hooked. And they've absolutely used the format perfectly, giving us little teasers and little, Herb has to be something more. And what is up with that creepy mailman? No, he's just a creepy guy. That's it. It just looks like he's just a creepy guy. Maybe he's Ralph. Maybe Ralph doesn't exist. Maybe that's just a thing to make it sound like she has a family so that she fits in better. Maybe the rabbit is Pietro. Well, maybe the rabbit's just a rabbit. It's going to be interesting to see how this pans out, but we got one more episode, and they gave us a lot of answers to the basic questions. The only questions they've been asked. We've been coming up with things on our own. We've been the one speculating that the engineer is somebody special and that there's some big bad behind it, and we're going to get an Al Pacino cameo or a Patrick Stewart cameo or an Ian McKellen cameo. No. Maybe Doctor Strange. Maybe nobody. maybe a post-credit teaser, a stinger that shows what's going to happen next. But yeah, this could really just wrap up very anticlimactically. I mean, climactically in the sense of a big MCU style fight, which they've kind of pretty much said it's going to happen. But it doesn't need to have these big answers that we've all been speculating and hoping for. And I mean, I still hope we get it. I still hope we see who the engineer is, and it's something, it's somebody special. It's Adam Brashear or Reed Richards or a Skrull or something. I still hope we have a big bad behind Agatha, because she's been a very gray character in the comics, and right now she feels almost too evil. But I think there's a motivation behind her that we still need to find out. Do the kids stick around? Does Vision stick around? It could be that simple, So this was a great episode in the sense that it filled in all the blanks. It was like the fourth episode. We step away from the normal format, fill everything in. But still, I mean, that's just a lot of stuff that's been hinted at and whatnot. Now it's time to pay off. And again, we may be overcomplicating this series. Don't know. Ask me again after the next week. We can sit down after this time next week and do a chat, and you guys could roast me for my ideas. And I got one guy that pops up on my Facebook page constantly that says stuff like, there's no reason to speculate. It's a waste of time and all this. Yeah, absolutely. It is. But it's fun. We're having fun doing it and getting into it. And, because we know all the histories and stuff, we know what the white vision symbolizes because we've read the comics. Those people who haven't, they're probably just sitting back watching the show and just letting it unfold and enjoying it. But when you've got the background, the knowledge of all this stuff, you go kind of a deeper level, like, oh, maybe they're going this direction or maybe they're going that. And we've got, decades of stories to go by. 50 years, 60 years worth of stories. We're looking at West Coast Avenger issues that came out in the 80s. I mean, just amazing histories to go by. And in our minds, the people who have read all these books are trying to condense all that information into the story, into the TV show. But that's not how Marvel does it. Marvel takes bits and pieces and then crafts their own storyline for the MCU, which may or may not follow the comics. It may borrow from this comic here and that comic there. It definitely seems to be borrowing a lot from the children's story. And the fact that we're getting the white vision may mean that it's going to follow what happened there with Wanda going crazy, the kids going back into Mephisto. I don't know. There's also a lot of speculation the kids have to stay around for Young Avengers, but the Young Avengers is speculation. What Kevin Feige has actually told us and what we think is happening, very different. So, all right, I think I'm going to wrap this up here. This has been my episode 8 review and comments. It was a fun episode. Like I said, I've already watched it twice. The mid-credit scene is very important, and it's very cool. But I think maybe they've been trolling us for a while, so we'll have to see how that goes. Thank you for watching. I hope you all have a great day. I will probably do another video this weekend because this is going to bounce around in my head a bit. And then on Sunday, we will be back with Pop Go the Writers with our guest, Paul Story, who has already been messaging me this morning with his thoughts and a pretty wild idea. Now, we're going to save it for the show, but he sent it to me mainly just to make sure that it's on file as this is my idea. So this is my thought. So if it turns out, I will totally back Paul up that he came to me on Friday morning and went, this idea. So, or this thought. So tune in Sunday for that and for discussion, and bring your Q&A, bring your questions and your theories, and we'll see you all on Sunday. Have a great day.